Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ophelia de Vore Show. I'm your host, Jim Carter, and it's great seeing you again. We've got a very special show for you today, and we like to think all our shows are special, but today we want to move and delve into a little more of just what affects us emotionally as people and psychologically. So we have a very special guest, Ms. Amy Torres. Amy, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you, Jim.
Good. Well, thank you for inviting us in to talk somewhat about what you do and some of the things that our audience needs to get a feel of, some of the things that address the type of practice you have, how it differs from some of the other types of practices, and what you hope to accomplish with your client base. So let you just start out telling us a little bit about Amy Torres and what your practice is all about.
Okay. I'm a Gestalt psychotherapist, and that is based on being here and now, I and thou. So it's different than the type of psychotherapists who use the blank slate approach. They're very objective and neutral and they don't talk much. We actually form a relationship with the client, and we should have done enough personal work that we're healthy and well adjusted, so that in this relationship, when old problems come up, our reaction is very different. Non-judgmental, patient, curious. So if a client is doing something that seems strange or self-destructive, we assume that they're making a creative adjustment to an insane situation from their past. Just like the body, if it's injured, you need to make a compensation. So if a person breaks their ankle, they'll walk funny. But that's because they're trying to take their weight off the ankle. You might say, why are you walking like that? Because you don't know they have a broken ankle. So if a person behaves in a strange manner and you keep an open mind, you find out that they had to make an adjustment in childhood to suit a crazy situation at home.
Gloria, you have just opened up a waterfall of questions, and I have a bunch of them now.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do is, first of all, start with what's the foundation of this type of therapy? What gives it credibility? Because you've said a number of things about making a relationship with your client base, where many therapists will say that's the last thing they want to do, have that kind of personal relationship. They almost want to have a barrier. Also, you talk about bringing in some other things, some old situations, and I guess finding out what has caused, if there is a damage, this type of damage. And isn't there a risk to having that kind of closeness or going that deeply into the relationship?
Yeah, those are all good questions. There is a risk if you haven't done your personal self-examination and self-assessment. Then your boundaries can merge with the client and things can get very messy and inappropriate. It's imperative that the clinician goes through therapy themselves, as I certainly did, and knows what it's like to be on the client side of the equation. Just like it's very different for a doctor if they happen to be a person who's been sick and hospitalized and been through a serious illness. They have a rapport with a patient and an empathy that a doctor who has not been sick does not have.
Well, so who did the preparation for your, maybe I guess we could call it a cleansing that you really need to go through so you don't intermingle what might be some of your nuances with what the patient is going through or the client is going through?
I was trained in Gestalt psychotherapy.
Now, I've heard that word. What does it really mean? So our audience is kind of connected to, when you say Gestalt, what is the derivation of that?
Yeah, Gestalt is a German word, and the rough translation would be integration. So healthy psychology means a good integration of your feelings. Everybody has all the same feelings. There's happiness, there's sadness, anger, hatred, disappointment, fear. Maybe there are a few others. When we're split off into different compartments, and when we're angry, we just either push it down or explode, that is not an integrated personality. My passion lies around communication skills. And if people learn to communicate with themselves first, then they're going to communicate well with others. So if I can identify for myself, I feel angry right now, and not act on that, just have a friendship with myself where I know in this moment I can tell I'm feeling angry because I know how to reference my body, and I feel my stomach churning, and now there's a little fire moving up through me, and I'm going to be aware of my internal situation, take a few breaths, and pause before I react to somebody else, so that we can respond rather than react.
Now, but we can't help how we feel, can we?
We cannot help how we feel.
That is a reactionary type of situation, how we feel. But we can manage what we do about it. In many cases, there are individuals out here who cannot manage their behavior beyond how they feel. If they feel anger, they lash out with anger. I know there are times where I'll be terribly emotionally bothered by something, and the situation, the environment, or the condition with which I'm working in will manage that behavior, where maybe in a different environment I would manage it or release it differently.
Yeah.
How do you instruct somebody how to gain that type of control over their behavior, and how do you discern whether somebody, when they come to you, is going to be able to control their behavior?
Yeah, people are at different levels. You do have to be willing. I won't even say motivated, but as a client you have to be willing to receive help. And a psychotherapist needs to assess where different people are at. I may have a client who's hostile towards me on a regular basis, and if I discern that that person just really needs love, and I hang in there with that person and they start to gain trust, that for whatever reason I'm not attacking them back, even though they can't believe it, even though they distrust me and think I'm a big phony at first, or I'm just being nice to them because they pay me, eventually they find out that it's really because I believe in them. Because I have empathy. You know, I naturally have empathy. That's why I went into this field. And that means the ability to put my foot in somebody else's shoe and really try on for size what their situation could feel like. You know, even if I haven't lived in that neighborhood, or even if I haven't been in that particular situation, I still know the feelings. I know the feelings of being very afraid, or feeling abandoned or rejected, or feeling like I'm incompetent and I'm not good enough to do something. And I've worked through those feelings, and it's been a really demanding journey in my own life. So I have it to give to others, that I will listen to them. And that's what we need to do to each other, but we need tools to work with what we've heard after we listen. And that means there's a formula I like to use, which is learning how to know what I think, what I need, what I feel, and what I desire. What I feel can be an emotion, like I feel scared, or it can be a body sensation. I feel my heart beating rapidly in my chest. And knowing this means that I'm forming an intimate relationship with myself. If I can speak with the word I, then I'm not assuming I know anything about you. The whole society here in America speaks in the second person. You know how when you walk down the street and somebody walks right in front of you, you get mad and then you want to say something, you know, nasty to them? This second person keeps us at a distance from ourselves. And then we assume that there's a universal experience that everybody shares. There are. But our first job as a society is to start to know how I feel, so that I can simply share with you if I'm upset. Jim, when you turned your back on me and spoke to that other person, I felt angry. Somehow I felt dismissed. And then I haven't called you a name or accused you of anything. I have just shared my experience with you, with a willingness to find out that that's not what you meant to do. But I have to check it with you because I'm getting upset.
We're talking to Amy Torres, psychotherapist, is
yes.
that? Psychotherapist extraordinaire. I like the way you talk. I like the way you just kind of let it unfold in your delivery. as I look back on some of my experiences, I look at Pavlov and the conditioned response, which I'm a major just believer in. I think we're conditioned by so many things that create our behaviors as we go through life, and some we never get away from. I believe Maslow, is it, or Maslow?
Yes.
The hierarchy of human needs, it starts with survival, and then I think it's fear is next. Survival, fear, belonging, and those self-actualization. It gets into all
self-actualization is the one that...
Yeah, but that's the last one. Survival is...
the first one.
And then we have books like I'm Okay, You're Okay, Dr. Thomas Harris, I believe. The new one out by... he's on PBS all the time, public television.
There's some great people on PBS these days.
It talks about just connecting with this higher self. The Power of Intention by Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Oh, yeah.
Now, how do you relate to books or teachings of this nature in terms of what you offer to a client?
I love them, and I reference them, and I give clients homework, and if they're willing to read, I'm mentioning titles like that all the time.
Well, how about the Celestine Prophecy?
Well, I haven't read the Celestine Prophecy, but I will say that, to my surprise, being raised an atheist, I developed a spiritual life along the way, and I'm a great believer in God now. And what I have found is that people have to develop an individual sense of self before they are ready to surrender to a higher self. And, I mean... it's profound, because if we're willing to surrender to a higher self, then society starts to work in cooperation and harmony, because we realize that we're one organism. But until we have some sense of accomplishment as individuals, we want willpower. We want to stamp our foot and do it our way, like a 2-year-old.
So Phil McGraw saying self matters. You buy into that? Self does matter?
Self with a small s matters, because we need to develop individually and become a person that we like. Whether our life seems humble or grand really doesn't matter, as long as we're satisfied with ourselves. And then we want to share with our brother. It just happens naturally.
Well, one of the success components is really effective socialization, which is foundational on good communication. And as you said earlier, if you can't talk to yourself effectively, how can you present your thinking to somebody else effectively? Can people change that much? You know, can you teach the old dog new tricks? Can we reinvent ourselves? Can the new you come out in a way where the new individual can really shed themselves of that old burden, that albatross that they've been carrying around for 20, 30, 40 years, and now they realize it's like somebody who's been a smoker for years. Can you put down that cigarette because you see what it causes and change your behavior? What do you find to be the key to this successful transition?
Jim, most people come in when they've had a crisis and many failures along the way, and they're down on their knees. So that's okay. When you're vulnerable like that, you're most ripe to actually experience a change, because you're open. But the other crucial factor is to get to kids in elementary school and to teach them emotional education, to play games with them where they get to say, I think, I feel, I need, I desire. And with those 4 simple statements, they will figure out who they are. If men in this society cried, if men cried across the world, I believe that war would come to an end. Holding in all those tears screws up your body chemistry at the very least. We hormonally self-regulate when we cry or when we sweat. You just release toxins and the body self-regulates. It seeks health.
Now, I don't have to cry before the show is over, do I?
Well, I would like it, but...
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're having a very in-depth conversation with a wonderful psychotherapist. Tell them where they can be in touch with you. How can our audience reach you?
You can reach me at amytherapy@msn.com. It's just the way it sounds. Or at 212-340-1201.
And what would someone expect or should they expect, and what will they actually find when they come to see you? Is there a kind of a getting to know you period before you get into the real deep-seated issues, or do you just go right into it?
I'm not big on chit-chat.
Okay.
I definitely go straight into it.
So it's kind of like, what are you really here for? What do you need help with?
What brings you here today, and what would change in your life if this works? And then I use body work. I have people search their bodies, and many people just don't know how to find a feeling. I'll say, what are you feeling? I think that I should change jobs. That's not a feeling, and I have to orient them into their bodies. Or I work with the breath, learning how to breathe. We breathe backwards, and we breathe shallowly. And so we don't even have the fundamental energy, life energy, that started us off.
So this is physiological as well as emotional,
Yes.
intellectual, and practical in its approach? So, I walk in, do you start me, you hear I'm hyperventilating, do you go right to the breathing, or do you go right to the, what's the source of your problem? Because you know now, if I win the lottery, everything will be okay.
Oh yeah, that's what they tell me.
Yeah, well, rumor has it, we haven't obviously won it yet, but do you find that money is a deep-seated problem? They say in divorce, money is usually a major component of why people get divorced. How about with people coming to problems? How exaggerated is that money piece, or do you really find that's as major as some early life experiences that we've gone through?
Well, money and sex are two typical problems. They're classics. But money represents security, and sex represents pleasure. So what people really want is a sense of safety and security, and a feeling that they're going to get to be happy. And these are just symbols of that. So I can predict for you that an unhappy person who gets money may have a short spin of, fun, and then they're going to go back to being unhappy.
So it's kind of difference between being stressed and being depressed. You can be stressed, and a couple of dollars can take that stress off, but if you're depressed, it may not really have that major effect.
That's right.
Would you say that's a truism, or am I exaggerating a little too much with that?
The way that you're defining the word stress is just, some burdens of circumstance that could be lifted by getting some relief, and that's true. However, if you're depressed, it means you're pushing down feelings, especially shame and fear. Those are the feelings that underlie anger. People are using drugs, food, gambling, sex, just to keep themselves away from the shame that lies underneath that, and the fear that goes with, oh my God, if I take a look at myself, what am I going to find inside there? So that's underneath a depression, and nothing will take that away. If you win money, you'll feel like you don't deserve that money, or you'll squander that money, and you'll go right back to where you were. Until you really like yourself and feel that you're valuable, that you have something to give, you won't be happy. In fact, giving is one of the secrets of life.
Well, what are some of the good drugs?
I like to use the metaphor of, if you have a broken leg, then you need a cast. So there are times that drugs are very legitimate, and antidepressants can change people's lives. They can give people a sense of well-being that they've never known before. And then you realize that you can feel differently. If you have ongoing psychotherapy with that, you can often reach the point where you can get off that antidepressant. Or if your fear is just causing you panic attacks to the point where you're having difficulty concentrating and functioning, a tranquilizer will help you through that period of time. If you seek help, you really need support.
This is where I run into maybe an obstacle. When I was growing up, we didn't have Ritalin. At least we didn't know about it. So now so many young people's behavior is managed with Ritalin or some other type of drug. When I was growing up, a switch or a backhand kind of set the tone for what you couldn't do. Now that's called corporal punishment, and there's some issues with that. But to be on the serious side of it, are we over-medicating our children? I mean, is there a behavior that was not tolerated years ago and managed by an authority figure where now they look to not have that authority figure but manage it with a narcotic that changed really the psyche of these children from what I've seen.
Yes, you're absolutely right. We are over-medicating, and parents who have to work all the time and don't really have the time to put into their kids rely on medication. It's also that things have speeded up between cell phones and computers and video games. Kids are divorced from nature, and there have been theories that if you get kids outdoors to stop and smell the flowers, to slow down, that their internal rhythm will help them with that ADD, attention deficit disorder. It comes with the rate of society right now. Kids don't have a balanced life.
It's interesting you mention that, because I'm very hyperactive. I grew up that way, but I also grew up on a farm for a period of time. So between taking care of the cows, the chickens, the hay, just the general farm work, you expended a great deal of energy in the work part of existing, but also you had the open land and the open fields and the freedom to kind of move in areas and to associate with other forms of life, whether it was a chipmunk or bugs that were along the ground, and you didn't feel the need to rid that area of all living creatures other than yourself, where you come into an urban environment and it's a little different. You almost feel violated if there's a bug in your presence. I can walk down the streets of New York and not feel the need to step on every creature on the ground, where I see some people need to. Not to say I want that bug in the personal environment, but I think that's really an interesting point. And ladies and gentlemen, the conversation we're having is really about talking to someone who will help you talk to yourself, addressing those things that will make you a better person and therefore make your life better, but really getting your arms around some reality that if you change, everything around you changes. When you feel different and see differently, everything else manifests differently. And our life is our responsibility. So, Amy, when you talk to people, how do you get them to buy into that ownership of it's your life now? You can blame mom, dad, the man, the woman, them, whoever them and they are. And I know they're out there. I just haven't been able to find them. How do you get Jim to say, okay, I'm going to take ownership of my life. I'm an adult. This situation I'm in, I can take or leave it. If I hate my job, I can quit. Stop blaming the job. Stop taking the check. How do you transition them from the victim to the ownership of it's my life?
You can't force it. It really is a point of readiness. However, acknowledgement goes an incredible way. If you acknowledge people, they tend to come around. People are not used to just having somebody say, I know how you feel. I can understand what you're saying. It doesn't mean that you're agreeing with them if they're complaining. It doesn't mean that you're promoting complaining. It just means that you're letting this person get it out. And then they may actually move along.
But how do you handle the forever victim? My life is a mess because of mom, dad, my wife, my children, my job. I mean, we have really a society that is so victim-based now. That's why I have to be on drugs. That's why I drink because of this. That's why I can't change jobs. If I hadn't gotten kicked out of school, if I'd gone... They're always the victim. And I mean, I run into many of them every day. Are they really going to stop being the victim, or is...
I would say lead by example and let them feel the hum of your well-being and sense the light in you, and that could give them hope. You can lead a horse to water, you can offer a book, you can challenge them on something and suggest another way, but you can't make them drink.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Amy Torres, psychotherapist. On the Ophelia de Vore Show, we like to bring you information, people, situations that will make your life different, make your life better, give you the impetus to get up and do something with your life and not wait for Jim or Amy or somebody else to determine what your success quotient is, but for you to do it yourself. So, Amy, we've got to give them some advice to take away. I know they can come see you, and I know they can call you, and they can email you. What can they just put in their hands right now to just start over that first hurdle? You know, a great journey starts with the first step and all those great little sayings. But people sit back and, oh, it's not about me. I could quit smoking, but I have a reason to not. Or I could. Once again, it's not just the victim, but they're caught in that cycle of behavior, that conditioned situation of, I can't break the habit because habits are difficult to change.
I suggest dare to step out of your environment, do something different, even if everybody you know would laugh at you. Go to the bookstore, into the self-help section, and just look at the titles. And if one of them interests you, sit in that store and read it. You don't even have to buy it, and see what happens. Also, go to a 12-step meeting. They are free, and they have them in every category. You can go to Debtors Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Codependents Anonymous. Sit with people who are in pain and have similar problems to you, and feel the hope, the experience, strength, and hope in those rooms, and keep going back. Watch. Something will begin to change.
Just to support what Amy is saying, it starts with one activity. And if you repeat that activity, it becomes a routine. And if you live with it, it will become a habit, a good one, and eventually you'll find that's your lifestyle. Whether it's starting something or stopping something, if you're addicted, if you're tied into something, take that first step with that one activity and repeat it, get into the routine, develop a habit, and you'll find your lifestyle will be great. Amy, great seeing you. I suggest everybody in the audience be in touch with you.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching the Ophelia de Vore Show. We look forward to seeing you. You can write us at P.O. Box 170, Murray Hill Station, New York, New York, 10156. I'm your host, Jim Carter. See you next week.